Doctor Who season by season. Season 11 review. Season 11 of Doctor Who aired in 1974. It was the fifth and final season to star Jon Pertwee as the third Doctor and the last to be script edited and produced by Terrance Dicks and Barry Letts. It was also the first season to star Elisabeth Sladen as new companion Sarah Jane Smith, and the last to feature Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier in a semi-regular capacity, although he would still appear in one story in Tom Baker's first two seasons. The season begins with The Time Warrior, written by the legendary Robert Holmes. This four-part adventure is notable for being the story that introduces not just Sarah but also the Sontarans for the very first time and being the first story to name the Doctor's home planet as Gallifrey. In typical classic series style, this monumental myth-making moment is just casually dropped into conversation almost as an aside by the Doctor while verbally sparring with the Sontaran. Above and beyond all that sort of thing, however, The Time Warrior is simply an absolute classic because it has a great script and great performances. Time Warrior sees Bob Holmes on cheeky and comical form as the Doctor finds the trail of kidnapped scientists leading back to medieval times, where they've been taken by a lone Sontaran, Lynx, played by the brilliant Gavin Lindsay, in order to help him repair his crashed spaceship. In the meantime, Lynx has taken up with a local warlord, Iongran, played with magnificently over-the-top scenery-chewing relish by David Dacre, and in return for sanctuary is plying him with futuristic weapons to help him defeat his enemies. Needless to say, the Doctor can't have that sort of thing going on and must set about trying to rescue the scientists, with the help of stowaway journalist Sarah, defeat Lynx and stop Iongran changing history with advanced weaponry. The Time Warrior is an absolute hoot, filled with great dialogue, Holmes and his actors clearly relishing the deliciously cod medieval dialogue, and is almost certainly still the very best Sontaran story, with the best Sontaran actor. Lindsay is fantastic in the role and manages to often be utterly hilarious while playing it deadly straight and menacing at the same time, simply because of the lunatic circumstances and juxtaposition that this single-minded alien warrior is in. Pertwee is on top form, and Liz Sladen makes a solid debut as a much more rabble-rousing version of Sarah than she would later become. The next story is Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs is often slagged for its truly diabolical dinosaur effects, which are largely risible, although there are a couple of surprisingly effective sequences, particularly the one with the T-Rex trapped in the hangar. Anyone who condemns this story due to the effects though is a half-wit, because this is actually a really good story and my second favorite of their season after Time Warrior. Dinosaurs is actually a really enjoyable conspiracy thriller that harks back to season 7 in many ways, albeit not quite as gritty, and is probably the last really great story of the Unit family. The betrayal of Mike Yates is a surprising and bold move for the show to take, and is actually really interesting, and I really like the whole subplot of the astronauts not knowing they're on a fake spaceship, which I'm sure was ripped off by some shitty-ass reality show in the last few years. Dinosaurs is great. The next story is Death to the Daleks, a story which seems inexplicably popular with many fans, but which I don't like at all. I got Death on VHS for Christmas one year as a kid, the same year I also got Day. I loved Day but was vaguely disappointed by Death. Of course these days that vague disappointment has transmuted into vague loathing. Death is an agonizingly boring story that wastes a reasonable enough a premise. The first episode is the best, which seems to be a setup for a much more interesting story than it actually becomes when the Daleks turn up. But even that episode ruins some atmospheric enough scenes and direction with Kerry Blyton's ear-bleedingly awful incidental score, which robs those scenes and the entire story of any kind of atmosphere and tension and just makes you want to scream at the people who kept hiring this fucker. Why goddamn you why? The guest cast are bland and insipid, the script by the numbers stuff from a Terry Nation who seems thoroughly uninspired by this point, and I just can't sit through this fucking thing these days to be honest. The next story is The Monster of Peladon, a 6-part follow-up to Season 9's Curse of Peladon, by the same writer, Brian Hales. Fandom largely loves Curse but hates Monster, while I find Curse an excellent insomnia cure and don't mind this. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's particularly great, but if you put a gun to my head and made me watch one or the other, I'd definitely pick this. It's helped by the Ice Warriors getting to be the baddies again and by Nina Thomas as Peladon's new monarch, who is a considerably more attractive and appealing queen than the queen we got in Curse. Shame we didn't get a romance between the monarch and the companion this time too, as that would have been a lot more interesting and probably more believable into the bargain. Tee chuckle guffaw titter. The final story of the season, and indeed of the Jon Pertwee era as a whole, is the 6-part Planet of the Spiders, written by Robert Sloman, who had written or co-written the last 3 season finales as well. Spiders is a well-loved story that I've, never been too keen on, to be honest. I remember back in the day I got a well-connected fan friend to tape me a copy of Inferno, which I'd never seen before, and was completely blown away by it. I hadn't seen many Pertwees at this point, and assumed that the era was always that good. I wanted to see Spiders and, with pocket money being what it was, elected to have him tape me a copy of it over the copy of Inferno. Needless to say, when I saw Spiders I was a little bit mortified by that decision. It's got some good moments, but the Spiders are laughable and the production suffers from many of the era's biggest flaws, such as major league padding and an often garish production that has actually aged worse than most of the 1960s stories. As a regeneration story it's down there with Logopolis and the Tennant and Smith embarrassments as one of the most excruciating. Season 11 is a bit of a mixed bag, like much of the era, but the good just about outweighs the bad, particularly Dinosaurs and Time Warrior, the latter of which is top 20 if not top 10 stuff for me. Overall Season 11 gets a B- from me.